Howdy! Welcome to Aspire Mountain Academy. I'm Professor Curtis, your instructor for this course in Introductory Statistics. In less than 10 minutes, this video discusses relative frequency distributions and shows how to create them in StatCrunch. Let's get started. The frequency distributions, as we've seen, are very useful, but sometimes the frequency distribution can be made more useful by expressing frequency in percentages instead of counts. So to convert from frequency counts to percent, we use this handy little equation right here. Just take the class frequency, divide it by the sum of all the frequencies. So here, 2.6% relative frequency comes from taking 2 and then dividing by the sum of all the categories. So if we take 2 plus 33 plus 35 plus 7 plus 1, that gives us 78. And when we take 2, divide by 78, that gives us 0.026. And when you convert that to from decimal to percentage, you get 2.6%. Now this second equation describes what we just did. So the 100 times 100 at the end converts from a decimal to a percent. Now, the relative frequency distribution here describes the IQ scores of a group of students enrolled in the same course. So you've got two students who had an IQ score between 50 and 69, and that is 2.6% of the whole group of students. So when you want to focus on proportional amounts relative to the whole, relative frequency distributions do much better than their more standard counts counterpart. Now, if you need to create a relative frequency distribution from a given data set, you can easily do that in StatCrunch. Okay, let's practice how to do that using the POTUS data file in the class StatCrunch group. If we want to make a frequency distribution of the years elected U.S. presidents lived after being elected to office, we first need to get the data into StatCrunch. Then we go to Graph, Bar Plot with Data. Then in the option window that appears, we select the Years column up at top, because that's where data is located, and then under Type, we're going to select Percent. We could select Relative Frequency, okay, but the values then will be in decimal form, so in order to get them in percent form, so we don't have to do the conversion, we just select percent, okay? And that way StatCrunch will do the heavy lifting for us, okay? So here's what we get when we press compute. Now, observe the shape of this distribution. Does it appear to be normally distributed? Well, think back on when we've talked about before about the shape of a normal distribution. Is that the shape we see here? I hope you just answered no, it's not, because normal distributions start low, come up to a high point, and then come back low again. But that's not what we see here. Here we're starting high, and then we come low, and then we come back high, and we're looking at kind of a roller coaster ride here. So yeah, this is not normally distributed. Now, does this tell you anything about the underlying data? We don't have a normal distribution, but does the shape we do have tell you anything about the distribution that we do have? I'll give you a few seconds to make your response. Well, look at the percentages in your relative frequency distribution. Okay, we have 24% in the first category of 0 to 5 years. That's nearly a quarter of all U.S. presidents dying essentially before the next election, because each term is 4 years. So that means you've got a 1 in 4 chance of dying after being elected. And as we've seen already, 8 members of this elite club have. That's a pretty dangerous job when you think about a 1 in 4 chance of dying within your term. I'd say that's pretty significant. Now, look at where the bulk of the data is. Okay? If you can make it to see your successor take over, then your chances are pretty good that you're going to live say another 10 to 30 years, because here's the bulk of the data right here. Okay, so you've got a good chance of living a long life if you can just make it past that next election. Now, if you prefer to see how to do this in StatCrunch via video, here you go. And here I also show you a little trick if you can't ever see the values on the tops of the bars in your graph. Okay, we're here in the POTUS file, and we're going to construct a relative frequency distribution using the years data. So the data in this column right here. To do that, I'm going to go up to Graph, Bar Plot with Data. I'm going to select the years column because that's where my data is located. And I'm going to, here under Type, I'm going to select Relative Frequency. And then I like this value of a bars option, so I'm going to check that off. Hit Compute. Yes, we have a large data file, so you'll do what you're going to do. And here's my relative frequency distribution. Now, what happened to the value above bar? I thought I checked that box. How come there's only one that's showing up? Well, when you see that, all that's saying is that StatCrunch doesn't have enough room to put the number up on top of the bar. So if I just take this edge of my results window and extend it out, eventually the bars become wide enough to where the numbers can be printed at the top. Now these are decimal forms. I'd actually want to look at percents and not have to do the conversion. So if I go back into my options window, I can go back and under Type, click percent. This will give me a relative frequency distribution, but I'll have percents up at the top, so I don't have to convert from decimal form. Compute, and voila. Here's my relative frequency distribution with the percentages on the tops of each of the category bars. And that brings us to the end of this mini lecture. I hope you found it helpful. You can find more mini lectures for this and other courses at AspireMountainAcademy.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.